And here we go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Bob Show here on KYCA 1490 AM, 103.5 FM. And we're really glad you tuned in and hope you stay around for the whole hour because we're going to be talking to Dr. Richard Holdaway again. He's a good friend of the Bob Show, and when he comes back to Prescott, where he probably prefers to be other than England, where you're from, I'm guessing, but no, I'm saying
indeed.
at least you get to see blue sky.
Blue sky, that's the main thing.
and we know you have a lot of choices on what you do and how you spend your time. We appreciate you taking some time to be with us today, and we're going to talk about space and different things. Do want to remind everybody that before we get started, I'm sure you've heard that Rollie Simmons, our mayor from 2001 to 2007, passed away, and I had the privilege of working with him the entire time he was mayor of the city of Prescott, and I just wanted to let everybody know that, and I've talked about it before, that he had a lot of empathy. His door was always open, and just one quick thing, right after we got elected to council and Rollie had been elected to mayor, the Indian fire happened. Like weeks after we were elected, and I told my wife, I said, I've got to go down to City Hall, and she said, why? I mean, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I just have to go, and I went, and I did, and I was down there, and she was right. I had very little to do except stand around in the way, but I wanted to be there. But who was there before me? Rollie Simmons was there before me, and he was a good mayor. He did a lot of good things. There's a ton of things that happened while he was the mayor of the city of Prescott that have kind of made part of what Prescott is today, that lots of people are enjoying, and mundane things like the parking garage, for example, and the community center, for example. But we were also involved with doing the call center, the 911 call center, that we combined everything so that when you dial 911, it goes into a particular place rather than it might go to the county, it might go to the city. We didn't know. We consolidated all that. We did a maintenance thing for vehicles for the city so that we could maintain our vehicles better, and little things like that all the way along, all the way through, and bought the water ranch out in the Big Chino and signed a contract, a 200-year contract with the town of Prescott Valley to provide water for future needs in our communities. And it was just a good 6 years of his time on city council, and I was appreciative of everything he did, and was very pleased. We bought open space too. Was very pleased with being able to work with him the whole time. So rest in peace, Rollie, and the city is still doing just great. So thank you. And anyway, Dr. Richard Holdaway, we're so glad you're back. And because of COVID, we had a couple of years there where you weren't giving presentations at Embry-Riddle. And by the way, all the presentations are at Embry-Riddle. There are 6 more left. 6 more talks, I guess you'd call them, presentations.
That's right. Yeah, it's a series of 8, and 2 have come and gone,
and
still left.
And we've got 6 more left, and he talks all about space and what's going on, and if there's anything that's not stagnant, that something's constantly going on, it's that issue.
Yeah, that's right. So I always update the talks anyway every time I come over. And the next talk is Tuesday next week, and that's on the solar system. So I've got a whole bunch of new stuff there on the solar system. That's not new planets that have arrived or anything like that. It's just more stuff that we know about the planets and other things going on, like the asteroids and the comets. So anybody that's out there listening, come along. The talks are completely free. You don't have to register. Just turn up 7 o'clock Tuesday next week, Embry, and then every other Tuesday after that.
Yep. And like Dr. Richard was saying, they're free. There's no, hidden anything. You just show up and listen to the presentation. There's always time to ask questions after the talk is over, and people take advantage of that. And the first 2 you've had really big crowds, so that people are showing up to listen to these things.
Yeah, we had
and
a couple of hundred for the first one. Slightly less last week because of all the snow.
Yeah.
But that's a good turnout, and as you say, plenty of time for questions afterwards. Both weeks we were taking questions for probably half an hour
Yeah.
after the talk.
Yeah. Area code 928-541-1016 if you have a question. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Holdaway, let's just give them a real brief synopsis of who you really are and how you ended up coming to Prescott, Arizona.
Okay, well, for those that haven't heard it before, my wife and I, Ruth, we come over to Prescott every winter. Essentially, our home's in Oxford, England. We love it there. It's a beautiful country cottage. We've got 400 years old. We have a wonderful time there, in spring, in summer, and the early fall. Winter in England is miserable. So think Seattle and make it 10 times worse than that, and that's life in the UK in winter because it's dreary. We arrived in the US beginning of January. We flew into LA because they're not doing the direct flights now. We flew into LA actually the very first day of the fires in the Palisades.
Oh, yeah.
So we could see the smoke from the fires as the plane came in. We stayed overnight, left the following day. The whole of the metropolitan LA area was covered in smoke.
Oh.
Then we landed here that same day, and that was the first time we'd seen blue skies and this big white shiny thing in the sky called the sun.
Yeah, part of the solar system?
Yeah, part of the solar system. We hadn't seen it for 2 months.
Really?
So that's why it's just so great to be over here.
Wow.
And we got lots of friends. And,
yeah. And
we had
your
a
work,
wonderful time.
your work, the whole time you were working.
Yeah, I mean, I've retired from full-time work, but as Ruth says, I'll never retire. I'm doing a whole bunch of things. I chair 3 companies, and I do a bunch of other things. And the lectures, of course. So the lecture series in Embry-Riddle. And I do some lecturing on cruise ships as well. It's tough luck.
Yeah, tough
tough work,
yeah.
but somebody has to do it.
I always, if somebody asks about you, I say that you used to work for the equivalent of our NASA. Is that kind of accurate?
The equivalent of our for your JPL. So the lab I ran for 17 years, called RAL Space, is like JPL, much smaller budget, but we still get involved in lots of things. We've had 250 satellite payloads launched over the years. So, a lot of things almost all the planets, a lot of stuff looking down on space, which is the subject of my talk at the end of February. A lot of stuff on astronomy, all sorts of things, all sorts of mischief we get up to. And we just have so much fun the whole time.
Yeah, if you come to one of the talks, you're gonna find out stuff that you've never heard before. It's just because of your expertise and your background. You know about these things, and you pointed the very first lecture, which everybody's that wasn't there missed. There is that famous picture. You've showed it before, and all these famous people that were predicting what was going to happen in space, and the second guy on the right, way over on the right, is
Uncle Albert Einstein.
Albert Einstein. Yeah.
Yeah. So that group of scientists got together in 1911. Talking specifically about whether it's ever going to be possible for humans to go into space. And they said, yeah. And their conclusion at the end of the week was, yeah, it probably is. A lot of stuff to sort out beforehand. But we reckon in 50 years, humans will be in space. And they were out by just 5 months.
I got it.
Yeah, just staggering. But that's why, they were bright people, and you don't get any brighter than Einstein.
No, you don't. I don't know. I heard a joke. Albert Einstein's a genius, right?
Absolutely.
But his brother Frank is a real monster.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that one?
Oh yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. And his wife was very bright as well. Extremely bright.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That was a terrible joke. Aren't you glad you turned in? You probably would never have heard that if you hadn't have tuned into the prop show. One of the things that's happened recently, kind of recently now, it's been a while, is the James Webb Telescope.
Mm-hmm.
You call it the James Webb Telescope?
Yeah.
I want you to talk. I want to talk about this because it's something that I think people can kind of relate to if they've been around a while. When you hear the word Hubble's telescope, and then you hear James Webb Telescope, and compare the contrast between the two telescopes.
Yeah, so really the Hubble Space Telescope, which was launched in 1990, so it's been going 35 years now.
Huge thing when it got launched.
Massive spacecraft, yeah, massive, and it revolutionized astronomy and what we know of the universe. And it did some amazing science. It's still operating today, still doing great science. It was only designed to last 7 years, and here we are, 35 years on, still operating. And then the James Webb Space Telescope, which is its successor, which was launched just over 3 years ago, has done even more incredible science. So to put the two into perspective, JWST, as it's colloquially known, James Webb Space Telescope, is between 100 and 1,000 times more powerful than Hubble. It also sees in a different part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So it sees infrared light, and infrared light is heat. So it's basically measuring heat from the universe. It's got one big advantage over Hubble, apart from the fact that it's up to 1,000 times more powerful. It can see through dust. And there's a heck of a lot of dust out in the universe. So whereas a lot of stars, galaxies, black holes, and other such bodies in the universe are hidden from Hubble because of all the dust, James Webb Space Telescope can see right through it, and has come up with some astonishing finds already just in 3 years.
I was going to say, okay, now the Hubble telescope is... Well, wait a minute. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and do that break that we got to sign for. So let's go ahead and take the break. There's a caller on line 1, so we will take Greg's call as soon as we come back, and then we'll finish with the Hubble and the James Webb conversation. So stick with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Bob Show. We're talking to Dr. Richard Holdaway, and Greg Lizelle is on line 1. So let's go right to Greg and see what he's got to ask. Greg, you there?
I am. As Rolly would say, how are you doing today, Bobby?
Yeah, that's right. He called me Bobby. That's very true. How the heck are you? I haven't talked to you for a while.
It's been a while. And Doctor, it's fascinating. One of my first things is I was a young man or a young lad. I wanted to be an astronaut or some sort of traveler in the stars, but that's long since, and I took up carpentry. So I had a question, and I'm going off topic, and I don't know if it's your particular field, but I read an article maybe 2 years ago, and I had people that were looking at me dumbfounded when the article, and I don't even know where I read it. It had to do with celestial movement, like our solar system going through the particular part of the galaxy right now, and it does this, according to this article, affected like our climate. Do you know anything about that?
Well, hey, Greg, thanks for your question. Just repeat the last couple of words. I missed what you said there.
the like we're our solar system that at this particular junction in the grand scheme of the universe, we're traveling through a particular part of our galaxy, and it does have a particular effect on our climate change.
Oh, right, climate change, linked to climate change.
Yeah.
No, there's no direct link there
Oh, okay.
because for a number of reasons. First of all, our sun, which is what is at the center of our solar system, that's in one of the outer arms of the Milky Way galaxy. So the sun itself is as is all of the galaxy, is rotating around the center of the Milky Way, but so slowly. It takes about 250 million years for the whole galaxy to rotate. So our position with it is pretty much constant over even over millions of years, let alone over decades. So no, it's nothing to do with climate change whatsoever.
So that article would have been hogwash then.
I wouldn't possibly be so rude as to say hogwash. However, my fifth talk, which is beginning of March, I think, Bob. My fifth talk is on climate change.
Right, March 11th.
Yeah, March 11th. That's the one that always has the biggest audience. So you need to come along.
Yeah.
Because what I do there is to talk about the facts and the fiction of climate change, and there is. In the media, there's far more fiction than there is fact.
Now,
so come along and listen.
In the media, almost everything is fiction. So,
Hey, Greg, you're asking a good question though, because I've heard the doctor talk about Andromeda, and you talk about movement in space, and tell.
Well, Andromeda is the nearest galaxy to the Milky Way. So it wasn't until 1905 when Albert Einstein predicted that the universe was expanding. And then Edwin Hubble, after whom the Hubble Space Telescope is named, he proved in 1925 that not only is the universe expanding, but there are other galaxies apart from our own. And the one that he was monitoring when he first discovered it was the Andromeda galaxy. That's the nearest galaxy to us, but it's 2.5 million light years away. So when we see it, and you can actually see Andromeda just about with the naked eye, when it's clear sky, and you're in Arizona, which is where you have the almost perfect conditions for seeing the sky. The light is so far away; it's taken 2.5 million years to get here. Now, one of the unfortunate things about us is that Andromeda and our own galaxy, the Milky Way, are on a collision course. So we are doomed. Now, the good news is that
I'm going to brace myself right now.
Yeah, brace yourself, definitely. Eat plenty of ice cream and chocolate while you've got the chance.
That's what got invented beer.
But the good news is that that collision isn't due to take place for another another 5 billion years. So we're okay for the time being.
Yeah, for the time being.
But so that'll have a direct effect on our climate.
That
well,
probably
this conversation is fascinating. I'm going to continue listening, and thank you for your input. And I will look forward to maybe attending one of your lectures.
Sounds good.
I'm not sure that's good enough. There are 6 that you can attend.
Just remember, they're in the Davis Learning Center out there, Greg, and on Tuesdays.
No, I've been out there several times, and I actually I have been to several. I've gone to the Grand Canyon probably 6 times during the star party of astronomers up there. So
a great place to go to see the stars, that's for sure.
That's interesting.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
Thanks,
continue
Greg.
listening. Hey, Bobby, you have a wonderful day, and I think I'm going to see you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Okay, I want to get back to the Hubble and James Webb, and what I was going to ask you is how high into space is Hubble telescope versus the James Webb telescope, and what difference does that make in as far as the effect the Earth has on the Hubble telescope?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good question. And they're both in completely different places. So, the Hubble orbits the Earth, and it orbits the Earth at a height of a couple of hundred miles. So part of the problem with Hubble is that the line of sight can be obscured by the Earth. So they had to be very careful about the direction it's pointing, because they don't want Hubble looking towards the Earth because the light will just be too bright. it would destroy the detectors. On the other hand, James Webb Space Telescope, because it's looking at heat from the distant universe, it's in a completely different orbit. It orbits 1 million miles away from the Earth in the opposite direction to the Sun. So it sits 1 million miles to, let's say, the right of the Earth, whereas the Sun is 92 million miles to the left. And it does that because it then sits in the Earth's shadow, so it's not affected directly by sunlight, because it has to be very, very careful that when it's looking deep into the universe, the heat that it's seeing is definitely from the universe, not any reflected light from the Earth, even from the body of the spacecraft itself. So two completely different options, but both very easy to control from Earth.
Okay, got a question. How light, as far as we know, light is the fastest thing that we know moves, right? How fast is that? Is that a fair question?
It's about 186,000 miles a second.
196,000 miles a second.
Correct.
So if somebody says something is one light year away,
a light year essentially is the distance that light travels in one whole year. So it's billions of miles. So to give you an example, when we look at the sun, which of course we're all taught at school not to do, but when we do look at the sun, because we all do it, looking preferably through a film negative, what we're seeing is the sun 9 minutes ago, because it takes 9 minutes for light to travel from the sun to the Earth. So when we look at the nearest star, which is a very, very long way away, it takes 4 years for that light to reach us. So we're looking at the star not as it is today, but as it was 4 years ago. Yeah.
I've heard people say, and we got 50 seconds till the heartbreak at the bottom of the hour, so this is a good question. I've heard people say that there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the Earth.
Well, it's interesting. I talked about this in my lecture last week. Yes, you're right, except that James Webb Space Telescope came up with a new number just a month ago. There are 10 times now more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on all the beaches on Earth. But the other staggering thing, if you look at the other extreme, that tiny stuff, if you take a teaspoonful of water, not many people know this, there are more atoms of hydrogen and oxygen in a teaspoon of water than there are stars in the sky. Just astonishing numbers.
Folks, we'll be right back after the hard break. Stick with us. And welcome back to the Bob Show here on KYCA. We're talking to Dr. Richard Holdaway all about things in space. And I want to thank Scotty, who's running the board over there, for playing Here Comes the Sun as one of the. I mean, he's laughing. Very clever on your part. And we were talking about Hubble and the James Webb Telescope and how incredible the James Webb Telescope is, because it's using infrared and it can look through dust and all those things, and what we're seeing now. And I've seen pictures from the James Webb Telescope about what scientists are saying are planets being born.
Yeah, we now with Hubble, with James Webb, we're able to see much further back to the beginning of the universe, much further back than we've ever been able to do before, back to somewhere around 200 million years after the Big Bang. Now that sounds a long time, 200 million years, but that's 200 million years out of 14 billion, which is the age of the universe. So we're getting further and further all the time to the edge of the universe. One of the things that Hubble found just about a month ago, or confirmed just about a month ago, was visibility of a single star right at the early stages of the formation of the universe. And you think to yourself, well, we can barely see galaxies that far away. How on earth could it see a single star? And the answer is a very, very clever piece of physics. So if I want to see something small, like the writing on a packet of tablets, because writing on tablets is always too damn small. You need a magnifying glass to read it.
Yeah, okay.
You can do the same thing in space. You can use something called gravitational lensing, which is to use a galaxy which after the light has been split from a distant point can be focused back together by the gravitational attraction of a whole galaxy back into a single point. So you can see with enormous clarity a single point billions of miles away, or trillions of miles away. And they've done that now very successfully with James Webb Space Telescope. Just like the same principle as with a magnifying glass. So JWST has done that. We've found some of the very earliest stars and galaxies, as I said. We found planets around other stars. Not only many of them, now way over 5,000 stars have been spotted very clearly with James Webb Space Telescope. But because JWST is so powerful, we can actually understand and detect some of the chemistry. So we've detected carbon dioxide, water, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, all of the elements that are essential to life. Now that doesn't mean necessarily there's life out there, but it does mean that there's a chance. And of course the quest for looking for life elsewhere in the universe is a constant process, been going on for many years and will continue for many years.
I saw a picture of Mars probably 3 or 4 days ago, and they said what I was looking at was water on Mars.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. So
liquid water.
Liquid water. So we've known for a long time that there's ice on Mars, but they've now detected the first signs of water on Mars, and we know many millions of years ago Mars was actually covered in water to the same extent as Earth was.
Would there be I don't know the right term, amoebas, bacteria, something in the water?
It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. And of course, that's one of the reasons why there's so much interest in going to Mars, to find signs not of life as we understand it necessarily, but very primitive forms of life. It's very, very unlikely.
Okay, now here comes a question right off. We're being told now that we've got this new space program going with in the United States now that President Trump did in his first term, and now he's got Elon Musk involved, and everybody says that it's much better to go to the moon and then launch to Mars from the moon. Why would that be?
Yeah, it's more efficient in terms of fuel for a couple of reasons. One is you don't have to take a big rocket to the moon. You can take a smaller one, and then you can drop a lot of the hardware, the engine, some of the engines, and then get off to Mars, because the moon only has 1/6 of the gravity, so you've not got to take as much
Oh,
mass
okay, okay.
all the way.
Obviously, yeah.
The other issue though is you can manufacture a lot of stuff on the moon. You can manufacture fuel. You can manufacture much more easily even food on the moon, and then take that to Mars. So that's the main reason for that. And of course, your president announced during his inauguration that you guys are going to go to Mars sooner rather than later, because NASA was expecting to do that around 2034. And I said on this show, I think 2 years ago, my bet was that Musk would get there first. And he's now planning to actually go to Mars in 2026. That's next year. Now, that won't be to land. It'll just be to either swing by and disappear into the back of beyond, or swing by and just possibly come back. But then with a plan of taking humans to Mars in 2029, using his new Starship, which has had, 6 launches so far, and some more successful than others, but he's learning all the time.
Are you willing to make a prediction right now that you and I, if we're lucky, will see a person land on Mars, a human being land on Mars?
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Nope.
No question about it, I would say. And, it may not be 2029, but it won't be far after that, because, not only does NASA want to do it, and not only is Musk leading the real show now, but the Chinese want to do it, and the Indians want to do it.
I was just going to ask about China.
Yeah, they all want to do it. So it's the new space war. So there are 2 space wars going on. It used to be the space race between the US and China, Russia.
Right.
Now it's between the US and China, but also private v government. And that's where Musk has made a real paradigm shift in terms of going to space at reduced cost, because with his reusable rockets and reusable Starship now, and Starship, when it's even the current version, when it's fully operational, will take 100 people in one go into space.
Yeah.
So he's completely changed the economics and the capability of the technology.
And before we came on, you were talking about launches that just today occurred.
Yeah. Today, if all goes well, by midnight tonight, we'll have broken the world record for the number of launches in one day. So there have been 3. There have been 3 definitely before the show started. There was one that was due to be launched about 10 minutes after we started this show, and then there's one more tonight. So there'll be 5 in one day today.
And what's going up there?
Well, the first one was an Indian mission to the moon, and it got launched just fine. But then there was a propulsion problem, and they're still working on that, but almost certainly isn't going to reach the moon. Then there was the second one was a Musk SpaceX launch of a couple of surveillance satellites. That went very successfully. The third one was Starlink, some of his Starlink satellites, another bunch of those.
Okay.
That I think was the one that was due to go up at the beginning of the show. Then there's another one from an organization called Planet Labs, and that I think is a mixture of science and technology. And then the final one is a Russian launch late tonight.
Wow. I know we're way past when we have to take a break, so let's go ahead and do that. When we come back, we're going to continue. This is getting more and more interesting all the time, so stick with us. We'll be right back. And we're back here on the Bob Show. Bob Recker, your host, talking to you right now. We're talking to Dr. Richard Holdaway all about things going on in space, and I was going to make some comments, but Tom Staley's on the phone on line 1, so I'm going to go right to line 1 and see what Tom's thinking about. Tom, are you there?
I am, Bob. Thank you for accepting my phone call.
Absolutely. What's up?
Trying to get my mind and my head around what your guest said when we have the space web and we look at these distant stars. I think I understand them to say we're looking back in time. Is that because the stars that we see are no longer in existence because they've already burnt out and light takes that long to get here?
Maybe
Am I
not.
thinking correctly?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. The answer to your question is yes and no. So
sounds like a politician.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't mean to sound like a politician, but the reason why it's both yes and no is that all stars are like human beings. They're born, they live, they die, and the typical length of life of a star is something like 7, 8, 9, 10 billion years. So if you look at our sun, which is the star that gives us light and heat, that's got a lifetime we know pretty accurately of about 10 billion years, and it's been in existence for 5 billion years, so it's halfway through its life. So some of the stuff that we see out in deep space is definitely, in fact most of it is definitely still there, but some stars that we can see have long since died. And the reason we can see them is the reason you said, which is the light takes so long to get here. One of the most interesting ones, which we can all see from here from Arizona or anywhere in the world in the northern hemisphere, is in the constellation of Orion, which most people can recognize. And if you look at Orion, it's relatively high in the southern sky at the moment, certainly from here in Arizona. The top left-hand star in Orion is called Betelgeuse, and you can tell it very easily because it's a sort of yellowy orange. And the reason for that is because it's almost at the end of its life. So it's 500 light years away. So that means that when we're looking at it, as you can do tonight if it's clear sky, you're seeing it as it was 500 years ago. So it's perfectly possible that that star is no longer in existence because it may already have died sometime in the last 500 years.
Amazing. Hey,
Right.
Tom, I'm glad you called.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get my head around.
I know.
We're looking at light from a star that may not be there because the distances are so astronomical that if they're, let's say, 100 million light years, that particular light source may or may not be there.
Mind-blowing, isn't it?
Isn't it? I mean, if the universe is 14 billion years old. Anyhow, I was going to ask your guest, I'm reading a book by Hugh Ross called Why the Universe is the Way It Is.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read that one, sir?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I don't get time. I'm having too much fun doing other things.
All right. Okay. Hey, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
You bet.
Okay. Hey, Ellie's on line 2, so let's see what Ellie's out for. Ellie, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Yeah, this is really interesting, and I was just wondering if I'm correct in remembering what you said, that there's more atoms in a teaspoon of water than there are grains of sand on the Earth. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. In fact, there are more atoms in a teaspoon of water than there are stars in the sky, and there are more stars,
cool.
and there are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand. So yes, you're absolutely right.
Awesome. Who figured that out?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you know that?
Well,
I mean, how do you measure that?
you can measure it quite accurately because we know what water is made of. It's made up of molecules of water is molecules of H2O, two atoms of hydrogen for every one atom of oxygen, and we know from any material, whether it's solid, liquid, or gas, how many what the interatomic distance is, what the intermolecular distance is, so we can figure out very accurately what the total number of atoms is. So that's not as difficult to figure out as figuring out how many stars there are in the sky. And it's only through JWST that we've now got an even better handle on how many stars there are. So in round numbers, and I'm well aware that it's so difficult to get our heads around these numbers, but very roughly there are 200 billion stars on average in a galaxy. So the Milky Way, which we're a part of, has about 200 billion stars. And we now know that there are about 2 trillion galaxies. It seems totally crazy, doesn't it, to try and understand these numbers? But it's a vast number. So that's very roughly how we know how many stars there are in the universe.
Mind blowing, isn't it, Ellie?
Yeah. Well, you think of, I'm a Christian. I think of the creation, and it's still expanding. It's wonderful to think about.
Mind blowing.
So
I know.
Thank you for telling me that.
Ellie, before you leave, tell me if when you were growing up, weren't you just fascinated by? And I remember this Halley's Comet. You know, Mark Twain was born when Halley's Comet was seen, and he died when Halley's Comet came back, and I think every 79 years or something.
86 years, yeah.
And that was just fascinating back then, and now we're talking about trillions of galaxies.
Right.
And it's just
and people going to Mars and things like that, rockets. Yeah.
I just what a fascinating time to be alive, huh? And we're just getting started.
But it's time to make supper right now, though.
Well, thanks for calling, Ellie. Appreciate it.
We come right back to reality.
Yeah, there you go.
But,
exactly.
Thanks for your question.
Thanks for taking my call.
Oh goodness. All right, we have to take a. Thank you, Ellie. I appreciate it. And Tom, thank you too. I'm interested in that book you were reading. Okay, we got to take one more break here before the show's over. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. And we're back here on the Bob Show. We're talking to Dr. Richard Holdaway, everything about space. And we're going to switch because we only got a few minutes left. And if I don't get into this, I'll feel bad. And the good gentleman sitting across the desk from me is from England. And they still have a king in England. And I've asked you this before. Why? I know Parliament runs.
Why not? What would you rather have had the last few years? Our king, or before the Queen, or your president?
Except they don't. They're just there. They're
head of state. So the king and before him, God bless her, the Queen. They're the head of state. They have no government function whatsoever, but they provide very good advice. Well, certainly the Queen did. The jury's still out with the king, but he means well, and he's had 70 odd years to prepare for the job of being king.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he ought to be up to the job.
It is delightful to watch William and Kate
Mm-hmm.
and their children, and William growing up with his brother Harry, and I guess I read somewhere Harry's not his real name, and nobody's really sure why everybody calls him Harry.
I think Henry's his formal name, but that's what he was baptized as. But everybody calls him Harry.
Harry, yeah.
Well, they call him that if they're being polite. They don't call him that now. So
Lately, they've been calling him all kinds of stuff. But it just seems to me when you watch and you see William and Harry growing up as children from Lady Di,
Yep.
and when Harry at some point, I guess, he comes to the realization that he will be a prince.
He is a
forever.
Prince. Yeah.
I mean, and he'll never ascend to being the king because William had children who are now the direct descendants, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so Harry is still in with a slight chance of becoming king, but it's so small. He's getting further and further down the pecking order now, as other children are born. So
well, William's children.
Yeah. So it's William will be the next king. And then after William, it'll be George, who's his
first oldest son.
Yeah,
his oldest son. Now, and there's no age limit. So George, if they both died, if King Charles and William
both
passed
died.
away,
Yeah,
it would be
it would be George, who's
7 or
I
8
guess,
now.
Eight, 9, something like that.
Yeah.
So too young to be anything formal in terms of king, but he'd be probably a king regent, something like that. Until he's a little bit older, but God forbid nothing will happen. So
no, of course not.
So the monarchy is safe.
Now, when you live in England and you have a prince like Andrew, who is King Charles's brother, and he does interesting things in his life. How does the public see that kind of thing going on, or is the intrigue just part of the fun of having the royals?
No, it's kind of strange. I mean, as I've said in this program before, I've met many of the royals, including Andrew, who I've met many times and worked with and gone overseas twice with. And when he's at work, or in the past when he was at work, he worked incredibly hard. I mean, I was in Brazil with him one time where he was up being briefed at 6 a.m. and he didn't finish working on behalf of British industry and British trade until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night. So that was all the good stuff. He's done some rather strange stuff, that's for sure. There's of course, the whole story around Epstein, and who knows what the real truth is there, because nobody actually does, despite what you read in the media.
No, they don't at this point in time.
That's right. So it's all speculation, and we found out, in recent years, really, how corrupt a lot of the media is and makes up the stories.
Oh, terrible.
Without, I mean, the day of proper journalists is almost gone. So the news media is making its own stories.
Yeah. And of course, with Meghan and Harry, they can make up anything. We'll believe it.
Sure.
I got to for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, Harry and Meghan used to be incredibly popular, and they were until the Oprah Winfrey interview.
Yeah.
And that's where things went bad.
Yeah.
And now we have one plea, which is we don't want them back. Please keep them over here.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Now I lost my train of thought. I was going to. I'm not sure. Well, okay. Thank you. What I know what I was going to ask you. What's the average guy in England right now today? What does he think about Americans? What is that person?
That's very interesting. I'm pleased you asked that. And
Yes.
we could talk for another show for that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It's changed hugely, I would say, in the last 3 months, because most of what the people in the UK hear is what they see, read in the papers and see on the BBC, and to a lesser extent Sky. Where does BBC get most of its news from? It's from CNN and NBC.
Oh, okay.
And we know now, of course, all the lies that have been told by the media and the White House. I mean, thankfully, you need a strong government, whether it's Republican or Democratic. It almost doesn't matter. You need a strong, honest government.
And you got to have an honest press, or the whole thing starts falling apart.
And now the facts are coming out, so the perception is changing quite radically.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Okay, folks, we're out of time. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next month on The Bob Show.